The night Prince Harry boarded that flight, something was different. This wasn't a casual return. This wasn't duty. This wasn't even reconciliation. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. This was urgency. Because when a prince who once walked away from the monarchy suddenly rushes back toward it, you have to ask a dangerous question. What is he about to lose? For years, Harry insisted he didn't care about titles, didn't need the institution, didn't want the crown. And yet, now, with Prince William's coronation date confirmed, Harry is reportedly back in the UK, not smiling for cameras, not waving, not posturing, but pleading, begging, not for money, not for apologies, but for something far more fundamental, his identity. Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. A prince without titles is not a rebel. He's not a symbol. He's not a threat. He's irrelevant. And in the monarchy, irrelevance is worse than exile. So ask yourself this. If Harry truly believed titles didn't matter, why does he suddenly need them so badly now? Something changed. Something big. Something irreversible. And it all points back to one man. Prince William, the future king, the brother Harry once walked behind and now may be running from. Because William's coronation isn't just ceremonial. It isn't symbolic. It isn't pageantry for tourists and television cameras. It is a transfer of power. And power, once transferred, doesn't look backward. It moves forward. It consolidates. It cuts loose anything that threatens stability. Even blood. Even brothers. Even sons of Diana. The monarchy is not a family first. It is an institution first. Always has been. Always will be. And Harry knows this. He's watched it destroy marriages. He's watched it silence grief. He's watched it choose optics over truth. But this time, the institution may be choosing between two brothers. And only one of them is necessary. For years, Harry positioned himself as the man who escaped. The spare who broke free. The prince who chose love over legacy. America over ancestry. Truth over tradition. That story worked. For a while. But stories collapse when reality catches up. And reality has a coronation date. A date that transforms Prince William from heir to authority. A date that gives him influence his father never fully wielded. A date that redraws the internal power map of the royal family. And in that new map, there may be no safe place for Harry. This is what makes Harry's sudden return feel different. Not triumphant, not defiant, but anxious. Because if there were ever a moment when titles could quietly be stripped, sidelined, frozen, or rendered meaningless, it would be during a transition. It would be during a new reign. It would be when the monarchy decides to reset. And resets are ruthless. Ask Edward VIII. Ask Princess Margaret. Ask anyone who believed love, individuality, or personal truth could outweigh duty. The crown does not negotiate with emotion. It absorbs it, then discards it. Harry knows this better than anyone. He grew up watching his mother crushed by that machine. He learned early that affection from the palace is conditional. You are loved when you are useful. You are tolerated when you are quiet. You are discarded when you are inconvenient. So when Harry walked away, the palace waited. It didn't chase him. It didn't beg him back. It didn't retaliate immediately. Because institutions don't panic. They wait. And now, with William's coronation looming, the waiting may be over. There's a reason timing matters so much in royal history. Decisions made during reign changes carry permanence. They feel inevitable, natural, necessary. You don't remove someone in anger. You modernize. You streamline. You clarify roles. And suddenly, a prince becomes a footnote. Harry's titles, Duke of Sussex, Prince of the Realm, are not just honorifics. They are anchors. They legitimize his voice. They protect his children's future. They give him leverage in a world that listens only to symbols. Without them, Harry becomes something else entirely. A celebrity. A former royal. A man forever explaining who he used to be. And explanation is weakness. This is why the idea of titles being stripped terrifies him. Not because he craves hierarchy, but because he understands consequence. Without titles, every interview changes tone. Every criticism sounds bitter. Every truth sounds vengeful. And worst of all, without titles, the palace never has to respond again. Silence becomes policy. And silence is how institutions erase. So if reports are true, and the urgency suggests they are, Harry isn't returning to the UK to make peace. He's returning to stop something. to delay it, to soften it, to negotiate the terms of his own survival. And here's where the story turns dark. Because this isn't just about Charles. It's about William. Charles is emotional, sentimental, conflict-averse, a father before he is a king. William is different. William was trained for this moment from birth. He is disciplined, strategic, controlled, and above all, he believes in the monarchy as an idea that must be protected, even from family, especially from family. William watched Harry break ranks, watched him criticize the institution, watched him expose internal dynamics. And while Charles hesitated, William remembered. Because kings don't forget. They catalog. They wait. And when the crown is placed on William's head, his first priority won't be reconciliation. It will be stability. And stability demands sacrifice. This is the contradiction Harry now faces. He wanted freedom from the monarchy, but not separation from its power. He wanted independence, but not erasure. He wanted to speak, but not be silenced forever. And now, with William ascending, the monarchy may be asking a brutal question. Can we afford to keep him? Harry's return suggests he knows the answer may be no. That whatever protection he once had as the king's son is fading. That once William becomes king, brotherly tolerance may vanish. Because William doesn't need a spare. He needs order. And order does not include unpredictable exiles who speak freely. So when Harry reportedly arrived back in Britain, the tension wasn't about forgiveness. It was about timing. How much time does he have left? Can anything still be negotiated? Is there a way to remain inside the system without surrendering everything he said? Or has the door already closed? This is what makes the story so gripping. Not scandal, not gossip, but inevitability. A man who walked away realizing the ground beneath him is shifting. A brother about to become king. A monarchy preparing to harden its edges. And a prince who may soon discover that leaving was easier than coming back. Because power forgives slowly, but it removes quickly. And as Harry steps back on a British soil, he may not be arriving to negotiate. He may be arriving to hear a decision, one that was made without him. Because what Harry doesn't realize yet is that the coronation isn't just about William rising. It's about who falls when he does. And when we come back, we're going to examine exactly why Prince William's coronation changes everything, and how one quiet shift inside the palace may already have sealed Prince Harry's fate. It was late at night when Prince Harry's private jet touched down on British soil. Not in the grand, ceremonial style the tabloids might imagine. No waving, no flashing cameras, no entourage parades. Just the low hum of engines and the quiet shuffle of his own footsteps. Yet, behind that quiet arrival was a storm. One of fear, urgency, and a desperate bid to protect something that had been part of him his entire life. This wasn't a casual visit. This wasn't the prince on a family weekend, waving for photos and chatting politely with palace staff. This was something else entirely. Panic. A rush back to a kingdom that he once left behind, ostensibly in search of freedom and independence, now overshadowed by a reality he could no longer ignore. Because titles, those symbols of heritage, influence, and legacy, were suddenly under threat. For years, Harry claimed they didn't matter. He had walked away, embraced a new life in the United States, built a family far from Buckingham Palace's watchful eyes. He had spoken openly about freedom, about stepping out of the shadows of a brother who was always first in line. He had insisted that he didn't need royal approval or ceremonial recognition to define himself. Yet the reports now suggest a different story entirely. Harry is back in Britain, not for charity events, not for diplomatic appearances, not even for family milestones, but to plead, to negotiate, and, if reports are accurate, to beg. Not for wealth, not for fame, not for influence in a casual sense, but for something far deeper, survival within a system he can neither fully escape nor fully embrace. The timing is not coincidental. Prince William's coronation date has been confirmed, and with it comes a seismic shift in the royal hierarchy. William is about to ascend from heir to king, and with that ascension comes an irreversible reordering of priorities, power, and protection. In the calculus of monarchy, there is only room for the king and those who serve its narrative without complication. Every title, every privilege, every position is measured against loyalty, utility, and public perception. And the clock is ticking. Consider the irony. The same man who walked away in defiance now faces a situation that no amount of independence can shield him from. Because the monarchy does not operate on sentiment. It doesn't wait for reconciliation or forgive acts of perceived rebellion. It waits. It observes. It catalogs. And when the time is right, it moves decisively. Harry grew up watching this system at work. He saw the consequences of stepping out of line, of challenging traditions, of showing emotion where none was deemed appropriate. He watched his mother, Princess Diana, navigate the treacherous waters of public scrutiny, private grief, and institutional rigidity. And now, decades later, he faces the same machine, calibrated not by grief but by strategy, and with a new king poised to take the reins. But what exactly does this urgency look like? Reports suggest private meetings, late-night calls, conversations that are not meant for public consumption, a desperate effort to assert some control over circumstances that may have already slipped beyond reach. In these moments, titles are not mere honorifics. They are lifelines, leverage that defines how a prince can move, speak, and protect his family. Without them, every action becomes vulnerable, every word scrutinized, and every intention questioned. And yet, Harry's struggle is not purely political or structural. It is deeply emotional. The monarchy is a family, and families are complicated. Brothers, fathers, children, these relationships carry weight beyond legality or protocol. But within the walls of Buckingham Palace, blood ties coexist with institutional necessity, often clashing in ways that leave no room for compromise. Prince William, trained from birth for the throne, is central to this dynamic. Unlike his father, who has often balanced emotion with duty, William is reportedly methodical, strategic, and unyielding when it comes to preserving the monarchy. Every decision is measured against stability and legacy, and there is little patience for deviation. A brother who critiques, distances, or challenges the institution may be tolerated in small doses. But as William ascends, tolerance narrows, and consequences sharpen. This is where Harry's return gains its urgency. It is not a reconciliation. It is a negotiation under duress. He is returning not to ask for permission, but to plead for preservation of identity, influence, and the future of his family. Because once William is crowned, the dynamics change permanently. Decisions that might have been delayed, moderated, or softened by his father are no longer under Charles's control alone. Authority shifts, power consolidates, and the window for intervention, however polite or strategic, closes. History provides a stark context for this scenario. Monarchies have long demanded loyalty, obedience, and clarity in succession. Titles can be stripped, privileges withdrawn, and influence curtailed, sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly. The mechanisms exist precisely for moments when the institution determines that the individual is a threat to stability, and the timing of such actions is deliberate. During transitional periods, when the old guard steps aside and the new order asserts itself, decisions carry a weight that is difficult to reverse. For Harry, this means every conversation, every appeal, every meeting carries heightened stakes. A single misstep could redefine his legacy, erode his authority, and jeopardize his children's position in history. The urgency is palpable. Every gesture, every word is calibrated against an invisible clock. One that counts down to the coronation, to William's formal assertion of power, to the moment when titles are no longer negotiable. And yet, amidst the strategy, the reports hint at something profoundly human. Harry is said to be anxious, vulnerable, and aware of the magnitude of what he faces. There is fear, yes, but also resolve. A willingness to confront the institution he once left behind, even at great personal risk. The tension is not abstract. It is personal, immediate, and deeply consequential. The narrative is further complicated by the presence of Meghan Markle. While Harry navigates these treacherous waters, Meghan's influence, both public and private, cannot be ignored. She is a catalyst, a shield, and, to some, a lightning rod for palace frustrations. Her role in Harry's decision-making, her protection of their family, and her own status in the public eye all intersect with the monarchy's calculus. Every move Harry makes is seen through the lens of their partnership, adding layers of complexity, perception, and scrutiny. And so the question emerges, what does Harry hope to achieve by returning? Is it reconciliation, preservation, survival? Or is it an attempt to assert agency in a system that has always demanded compliance? Whatever the answer, one fact is undeniable. He is no longer a prince in exile. He is a prince under pressure, a prince racing against time, a prince confronting a brother who is about to ascend as king and whose priorities may not include him. The stakes are clear. The clock is ticking, and the monarchy, with its centuries of tradition, calculated responses, and unyielding protocols, does not hesitate when it perceives risk. Harry's flight back to Britain is more than a journey. It is a confrontation with the reality he once avoided. It is a reckoning with power, family, and legacy. It is the moment where rebellion meets consequence. And as he steps onto that tarmac, reports suggest he is not stepping into a reunion. He is stepping into uncertainty, into negotiation, into a world where every word could tip the balance. Every gesture could carry meaning far beyond its intention, and every move is watched, not just by the public, but by the institution itself. Because what Harry may not yet fully grasp is this. Once the coronation occurs, William's authority will extend beyond symbolism. It will extend into the realm of action, influence, and restructuring. Decisions made at that moment could render any plea moot, any negotiation irrelevant, any attempt at preservation an exercise in futility. The question is no longer hypothetical. Can Harry navigate this delicate moment without losing everything he once claimed to have walked away from? Or has the door already closed behind him, and he is now racing not toward reconciliation, but toward an unavoidable reckoning? And while the public speculates, the palace watches. Every word, every movement, every step is catalogued, measured, and evaluated. Because in the monarchy, timing is everything. And Harry's timing, whether he intended it or not, has placed him squarely in the path of a transition he may not survive unscathed. The moment Harry's private plane touched down in the UK, the implications rippled far beyond the tarmac. Unlike a routine royal visit, this arrival carried a sense of inevitability. A collision course between a prince who had once walked away and a monarchy that was preparing to consolidate power in a way that left little room for deviation. The press, of course, would never fully capture the tension. Cameras focused on his smile, his wave, his composure. But behind the optics, insiders suggest a different story. A man grappling with the very real possibility that his life, titles, and legacy could be stripped away before he even had the chance to act. This isn't mere speculation. Sources close to the palace claim that Harry's movements were calculated, urgent, and, above all, deliberate. Every meeting, every late-night phone call, every whispered negotiation suggests a man attempting to reclaim agency in a situation that may have already passed the point of reversibility. It's worth pausing here to consider why this matters. Titles are not just words on a certificate. They are symbols of legitimacy, influence, and authority. Without them, Harry is no longer Prince of Sussex in any meaningful sense. He is a public figure, yes, a celebrity perhaps, but stripped of institutional protection, he becomes vulnerable to a world that is both fascinated and unforgiving. And there is history to back this up. Consider Edward VIII, whose abdication reshaped the monarchy, or Princess Margaret, whose desires often collided with duty. In each case, the institution acted with a cold logic that left personal feelings largely irrelevant. The lesson is clear. When a monarchy deems someone extraneous, they can quietly remove them from power, influence, and legacy, often under the guise of modernization, streamlining, or public interest. Harry's return, therefore, is not a triumph. It is a calculated risk. He is racing against the clock, not just to negotiate his titles, but to protect the standing of his family and the memory of his mother, whose legacy continues to loom over every palace decision. Every action he takes is being evaluated against precedent, protocol, and the looming authority of a future king. William's coronation, already a fixed point on the royal calendar, represents a shift that cannot be underestimated. It is the moment when heir becomes sovereign, when authority is consolidated, and when priorities are redefined. In that transition, tolerance for deviation narrows, and the question becomes stark. Can Harry retain his position within the royal framework, or will his independence render him expendable? Reports suggest that Harry is acutely aware of the stakes. Insiders describe him as tense and focused, a stark contrast to the calm, defiant public persona he has maintained in interviews and appearances over the years. He is not returning for optics. He is returning for survival. Every step he takes is measured against consequences, every conversation weighed for potential outcomes. And while much of the world focuses on his relationship with the media or the public, the real drama unfolds behind closed doors. Conversations with family members, palace officials, and legal advisors form a web of negotiation that few outside the inner circle will ever fully understand. In these moments, titles are not just symbolic. They are leverage. They are protection. They are, in many ways, the difference between being a participant in the monarchy and being rendered irrelevant. The emotional stakes are equally high. This is not a mere institutional conflict. It is a family drama with centuries of precedent, emotional trauma, and personal history layered beneath every interaction. Brothers, fathers, children. The lines between duty and love are blurred, and yet the consequences are real and immediate. Prince William, trained for this moment from birth, represents the next phase of authority. Unlike Charles, who has often balanced sentiment with duty, William is said to be methodical, strategic, and unyielding. Every decision is filtered through a lens of preserving stability, protecting legacy, and ensuring the institution survives, even at the expense of family relationships. This makes Harry's return even more urgent. Reports indicate that he is not seeking reconciliation so much as negotiation under duress. An attempt to assert some influence over circumstances that may already be beyond his control. The monarchy does not forgive easily. It does not negotiate openly. And it certainly does not make exceptions once a new reign begins. Adding another layer of complexity is Meghan Markle, whose role in Harry's decision-making is both public and private. She is described as a catalyst, a shield, and, to some within the palace, a lightning rod for controversy. Her presence affects perception, strategy, and internal calculations. Every move Harry makes is interpreted not just as his own, but as part of a partnership, one that has already challenged centuries of tradition and protocol. So what is Harry hoping to achieve? Preservation, yes. Influence, perhaps. And survival, almost certainly. But time is short. Every day counts as the coronation approaches, and every decision could have irreversible consequences. The palace, with its centuries of institutional memory and strategic calculation, is not reacting out of anger. It is acting with precision. And in this environment, a single misstep can have far-reaching ramifications. This is the heart of the drama. Harry, the prince who walked away, now faces a moment where returning is as perilous as leaving. Authority is consolidating around his brother, and the decisions made in this transitional period could redefine his life, his children's future, and his place in history. The tension is palpable. The stakes are enormous, and the outcome remains uncertain. Because when a king rises, those who stand outside the institution's favor risk more than embarrassment. They risk erasure. Legacy, influence, and even identity can be quietly, systematically stripped away, leaving nothing but a cautionary tale of ambition, family, and power. And as Harry moves deeper into the halls of the palace, every gesture, every word, every silence carries weight. Every meeting is a potential turning point. Every conversation is a negotiation, and every decision is a step along a knife-edge path. The question now is stark. Can a prince who walked away reclaim his place in the monarchy? Or is this final return not a reconciliation, but a reckoning? And the answer, as the coronation looms ever closer, may come faster than anyone expects. The palace is a world of protocol, history, and rigid hierarchy, and every step Harry takes is measured against centuries of precedent. To the casual observer, it might seem like a gilded stage, elegant halls, polished floors, and ceremonial splendor. But for those inside, it is a crucible where every gesture, every word, and every decision carries weight beyond imagination. For Harry, who once claimed he could exist outside it, the stakes now are existential. Titles are more than honorifics. They are shields. They are keys to influence. They are assurances that, no matter how controversial your choices, your voice still carries authority. Without them, Harry faces a reality few can truly appreciate. The institution can continue, and the world will notice little, even if he tries to assert relevance. Imagine a world where a prince is no longer a prince, where his children, his family, and his legacy are rendered secondary to the demands of succession and stability. That is the world Harry now faces, a world that can change on a coronation date. Because William's ascension is not a mere formality. It is a reset button, one that recalibrates who matters, who is protected, and who may be quietly sidelined. And the timing is brutal. Harry's flight back to the UK coincides with the final preparations for William's coronation. Every palace advisor, every member of the royal household, every ally and skeptic is watching. Decisions that could have been deferred under Charles are now imminent. Authority is consolidating around a king-in-waiting, and there is little room for negotiation. The message is clear. Power is shifting, and Harry's place in it is uncertain. Insiders suggest that Harry's approach is both strategic and emotional. It is not purely about legality or symbolism, although both are critical. It is about survival within a system that has never tolerated deviation for long. Every conversation is carefully crafted, every appeal meticulously considered. And yet, emotion seeps in, pride, fear, desperation, and loyalty intertwined in ways that make negotiation precarious. Consider this. The monarchy is an institution that thrives on continuity. It measures actions against history and precedent. Every move Harry makes is weighed not only against his personal goals, but against centuries of expectation. And the problem is simple. Harry's independence, his public candor, and his previous criticisms of the royal family place him at odds with that expectation. The stakes are personal as well as institutional. Brothers, fathers, and children are bound not only by blood, but by the expectations of duty. For Harry, reconciling with the monarchy is not just a matter of preserving his titles. It is about negotiating relationships that have been strained for decades. Every gesture carries the potential for approval or rejection. Every word can heal or widen rifts that have existed since childhood. Prince William, trained for this precise moment, represents both a stabilizing force and an unyielding authority. Unlike Charles, who often balanced sentiment with duty, William is described as methodical, disciplined, and strategic. He has watched Harry from afar, cataloged missteps, and observed behavior patterns that influence how he will approach his brother's return. And William's coronation marks a pivotal moment, the threshold at which he can act decisively, with authority that is less negotiable and more absolute. Harry's urgency, then, is understandable. He is racing against a timeline he cannot control, negotiating within a system that operates at its own pace, and attempting to assert influence in a situation where authority is shifting. Every private meeting, every whispered conversation, every strategic appeal is part of a larger calculation, one in which failure is not merely a setback, but a potential erasure of identity and legacy. Adding complexity is Meghan Markle's involvement. She is not merely a partner, she is a catalyst. Her presence, influence, and public perception intersect with the palace's calculations. Every move Harry makes is seen through the lens of their partnership, intensifying scrutiny and shaping potential outcomes. Meghan's role adds both protection and pressure, shielding Harry in some ways while drawing criticism and attention in others. So what is Harry's objective? Reports suggest that it is a mixture of preservation, negotiation, and survival. But the reality is more nuanced. He is attempting to reclaim agency within a system designed to resist deviation. He is navigating a transition where tolerance is narrowing and authority is consolidating. And he is doing so under conditions where mistakes could carry permanent consequences. History has shown how monarchies handle such moments. Decisions are rarely made publicly. Titles can be quietly stripped. Influence can be subtly curtailed. Legacies can be reshaped without ceremony. And timing is crucial. Transitional periods offer opportunities for consolidation that might be impossible at any other moment. For Harry, this makes every gesture, every word, and every meeting critical. A misstep could redefine his life. A miscalculation could impact not only him, but also his children, his family, and his place in history. And as William's coronation approaches, the urgency intensifies. This is a moment of reckoning, not for the monarchy alone, but for Harry himself. The prince who once claimed he could step away now faces the stark reality that some decisions cannot be avoided. Some doors, once closed, may never reopen, and some consequences, once enacted, may redefine the trajectory of a life lived both inside and outside the palace walls. The question that hangs over every step, every meeting, every conversation is simple yet terrifying. Can a prince who walked away reclaim his place within the monarchy? Or is this return not about reconciliation but a final, desperate attempt to negotiate survival before authority is firmly consolidated? As Harry moves through the corridors of power, behind doors that few will ever enter, he is not merely returning as a prince. He is returning as a man confronting the consequences of choices made decades earlier, navigating a family drama intensified by centuries of tradition, public scrutiny, and shifting authority. The tension is palpable. The stakes are enormous, and the outcome, as William's coronation approaches, remains uncertain. But what comes next is a moment that could redefine everything, and not a single person, not even Harry, is fully prepared for it. By now, it is clear, Harry's return to the UK is more than symbolic. It is a calculated response to an existential threat, one that no previous exile, interview, or public statement could mitigate. For years, he cultivated an image of independence, freedom, and principled defiance. He walked away from the monarchy with his head held high, choosing love, privacy, and self-determination over obligation, protocol, and the strictures of royal life. But independence comes at a price, and the price is being measured in real time as William's coronation approaches. The palace is patient, but not inert. A monarchy functions with precision. It observes, it weighs, it acts. And, crucially, it acts decisively when authority is consolidated. Charles has often balanced sentiment with duty. He has hesitated where action might have been expedient. William, however, represents the next phase of leadership, one in which decisiveness will dominate, personal emotion will take a back seat, and institutional stability will be the overriding priority. In such an environment, Harry's return is no longer merely a family matter. It is a challenge to authority, timing, and expectation. Titles are the axis around which this tension revolves. They are more than tradition. They are legal instruments, cultural signals, and shields of legitimacy. A prince stripped of his titles loses not just privilege, but leverage. Without those anchors, Harry risks becoming an observer in a family and institution he once belonged to, vulnerable to every decision made by a brother who now commands authority. It is important to recognize how subtle these power shifts can be. The palace rarely announces its intentions in public. Actions are cloaked in language designed to maintain dignity, continuity, and calm. Streamlining, modernization, clarifying roles. These are terms that mask decisions that, in effect, remove agency, influence, and recognition. The institution does not operate with malice. It operates with strategy. And timing is everything. Harry's arrival coincides with this precise moment of strategic recalibration. With the coronation confirmed, the monarchy is entering a phase where tolerance for deviation is minimal. Every behavior, every word, every gesture is being assessed not only for immediate impact, but for historical record. Decisions made now carry permanence, for titles, for influence, for legacy. And there is emotion layered into every action. Harry is a son, a brother, and a father. He is aware that the choices he faces are not abstract. They will impact his children's inheritance, his family's perception, and his personal narrative. His identity, previously claimed as independent and self-defined, is now under scrutiny by an institution that measures worth in relation to duty, loyalty, and lineage. William's role cannot be overstated. He has been trained his entire life for this moment. Every lesson, every observation, every calculation has been designed to prepare him for authority. Unlike Charles, whose tenure is characterized by periods of negotiation and hesitation, William represents a monarch in waiting who will act with strategic clarity. And the coronation is the moment when clarity translates into action. Harry's urgency, therefore, is both tactical and emotional. He is not returning for ceremony. He is not returning for appearances. He is returning to negotiate survival, to assert influence, and to protect legacy in a moment when the margin for error is shrinking. Each conversation, each gesture, each appeal is a move on a chessboard that has been in play for decades. And the opponent is experienced, strategic, and uncompromising. Meghan Markle's role adds additional complexity. She is not simply a partner in these efforts. She is a force multiplier. Her influence, visibility, and public perception create both protective and complicating factors. Every action Harry takes is magnified by association. Every negotiation is filtered through the lens of their partnership, influencing palace perception, media narrative, and public opinion. What, then, is Harry's objective? Reports suggest a combination of preservation, influence, and survival. But deeper analysis suggests it is about maintaining relevance in a system that increasingly views deviation as a liability. Independence and defiance were once powerful statements. Now, they may be vulnerabilities that must be negotiated away, defended, or reconciled, and quickly. History offers perspective. Monarchies do not always act with overt force, but their mechanisms are effective. Titles can be removed quietly. Privileges can be curtailed subtly. Influence can be diminished without spectacle. Timing is critical. Transitional periods provide opportunities for consolidation that may never arise again. For Harry, this is that moment, and the human element cannot be ignored. Relationships between brothers, fathers, and children are intertwined with duty and expectation. Harry's choices have repercussions not only for himself, but for his children, his spouse, and the perception of the family legacy. Every gesture carries weight, every decision is scrutinized, and every interaction has potential consequences far beyond the immediate moment. This is a test of survival within a system that rewards loyalty and punishes deviation. Harry's return is not merely a family reunion. It is a confrontation with power, timing, and consequence. A moment where independence and defiance meet institutional rigor, where public perception intersects with private negotiation, where past choices are measured against present realities. And as he moves deeper into the palace, every footstep is a negotiation. Every word, tone, and gesture carries significance. The corridors he once walked freely now feel constrained, measured, and full of consequence. Because when a coronation occurs, authority consolidates. And consolidation leaves little room for exceptions, compromises, or reconsideration. The question is unavoidable. Can Harry reclaim his place in a monarchy that has evolved without him? Or is his return a final attempt to negotiate survival before authority, once consolidated, renders his titles, influence, and legacy irrelevant? The clock is ticking. Every day, every meeting, every whispered conversation is a countdown. And when the coronation arrives, the consequences of delay, miscalculation, or misstep will be irreversible. And just as Harry begins navigating this treacherous landscape, he will encounter the first sign that his timing, no matter how urgent, may already be too late. Even for a man who grew up surrounded by pomp, protocol, and centuries of tradition, Harry's return to Britain is a lesson in subtle but absolute power. The palace does not yell. It does not threaten. It does not engage in theatrics. Instead, it waits, observes, and acts at the exact moment when the consequences are unavoidable. This is why timing is everything. Harry's arrival coincides with a moment when the institution's tolerance is narrowest, when authority is consolidating, and when every move, every gesture, every word, every conversation is assessed for impact. Titles, in this context, are not ceremonial. They are lifelines. They confer influence, legitimacy, and protection. They act as buffers against the machinery of monarchy, allowing a prince to speak, act, and navigate public perception with a degree of immunity. Without them, Harry risks becoming a public figure stripped of institutional protection, a man whose voice and choices carry weight only as long as the public grants it. And in the unforgiving world of royalty, public attention is volatile, fleeting, and unpredictable. The coronation of Prince William changes everything. Where once decisions might have been delayed, debated, or softened by Charles, William's future authority allows for action that is decisive, swift, and, in some cases, irreversible. Authority shifts from father to son, from measured diplomacy to calculated decisiveness. And the palace, as always, is fully aware of the implications. Every detail of Harry's movements, conversations, and meetings is being observed, catalogued, and interpreted against centuries of precedent. For Harry, the stakes are both deeply personal and institutionally critical. He is not just negotiating titles. He is negotiating identity, legacy, and survival within a system that does not tolerate unpredictability. Each action is measured not only for its immediate effect, but for the long-term consequences on his children, his family, and his historical footprint. Without careful navigation, independence becomes vulnerability, defiance becomes liability, and even love becomes a point of contention. William's rise to power is central to this tension. Unlike Charles, who has historically allowed for more negotiation and delay, William represents a monarch trained to act decisively, to weigh options methodically, and to enforce institutional stability. For him, tolerance for deviation, especially from a brother who has publicly challenged tradition, is limited, and the coronation marks the moment when authority is not just symbolic but actionable. Harry's urgency reflects the convergence of these realities. This is not a casual negotiation. This is a race against authority, timing, and institutional inertia. Every late-night conversation, every closed-door meeting, every strategic appeal is an attempt to assert agency in a system that has always dictated the terms. And while emotion is present, pride, fear, desperation, the stakes are never personal in the monarchy. They are systemic. Failure is not personal embarrassment. It is erasure. Meghan Markle's presence compounds the complexity. She is both a shield and a lightning rod, amplifying Harry's position while simultaneously drawing scrutiny. Their partnership is a factor in every negotiation, every assessment, and every calculation within the palace. The monarchy is not just assessing Harry's behavior. It is assessing the dynamics of their union, the influence of their public image, and the potential risk posed to institutional stability. Reports suggest that Harry's objective is clear but fraught with difficulty: preserve titles, maintain relevance, and protect the legacy of his children. But beyond these practical concerns lies a deeper, more existential challenge. Can a man who once walked away reclaim agency within a system that has adapted to his absence? Can he navigate relationships strained by decades of conflict, public scrutiny, and family tension, all while negotiating his place under a brother who is about to wield ultimate authority? History shows how monarchies handle such moments. Titles are stripped quietly, privileges diminished, and influence curtailed, often under the guise of modernization, streamlining, or necessity. Timing is critical. Transitional periods are when institutions consolidate power, enforce hierarchy, and redefine roles. And Harry has arrived precisely during this period, where delay and negotiation are both limited and risky. Emotional stakes are equally profound. Brothers, fathers, and children are bound together not just by blood, but by expectation, duty, and the weight of public perception. For Harry, every step carries consequences that extend far beyond the immediate moment. To his children, his family, and the historical record, independence and defiance, once statements of freedom, now risk being liabilities. This is why the urgency of Harry's return is palpable. It is not a triumphant homecoming. It is a confrontation with power, with timing, and with consequence. Every move, every conversation, every appeal is a calculation under pressure, a negotiation in a system designed to tolerate little deviation. And the window for success is closing rapidly. The palace operates on centuries of institutional memory. It does not panic, but it does act decisively when authority is consolidated. And in the current context, that authority is shifting from Charles to William, from measured diplomacy to decisive action. For Harry, that means every opportunity for negotiation, every plea, every appeal is measured against an unyielding timeline, one that culminates in a coronation that may permanently redefine his role, titles, and legacy. So the question is stark: can Harry, the prince who once walked away, reclaim a position within the monarchy that he has openly challenged? Or is this return, no matter how urgent, a final, desperate attempt to mitigate the consequences of choices made long ago? As the coronation draws near, and the corridors of the palace grow ever more suffused with planning, tension, and quiet calculation, Harry's fate hangs in the balance. Every conversation, every gesture, every word carries weight. And the reality is this: when authority consolidates, the consequences of delay, miscalculation, or misstep are irreversible. And just as Harry begins navigating this intricate and high-stakes landscape, he will soon confront a revelation that could change everything, a revelation that few, if any, saw coming. The moment Prince Harry stepped off his private jet, it was clear this was not a routine visit. There were no cameras flashing, no polite waves for waiting crowds, no ceremonial fanfare. This was a man returning to a kingdom he once left, urgent, focused, and aware that every second counted. Those closest to him describe a mix of determination and anxiety, a prince racing not toward family reconciliation, but toward a moment that could define the remainder of his life. For years, Harry built a life that seemed detached from the monarchy. He moved across the Atlantic, married for love, started a family, and forged a public persona separate from the constraints of royal expectation. Titles, protocol, legacy, all of it was secondary, supposedly irrelevant. He cultivated an image of independence, even rebellion, painting himself as the prince who chose freedom over tradition. And for a while, it worked. But now, that independence faces an existential threat. William's coronation is on the horizon, and with it comes a seismic shift in power. The heir becomes sovereign, authority consolidates, and tolerance for deviation narrows. The very titles Harry once dismissed, Duke of Sussex, Prince of the Realm, suddenly carry weight in ways he cannot ignore. Without them, his voice, influence, and legacy are vulnerable. And in a monarchy, vulnerability is not just dangerous, it is invisible. Harry's urgency is unmistakable. Sources report late-night meetings, private phone calls, and strategic discussions behind closed doors. Every move seems designed to negotiate survival in a system he once rejected, but which has never fully released him. This is not about public appearances or media narratives. It is about influence, relevance, and protection. Every gesture carries potential consequences, every word a calculated risk. Titles are more than tradition, they are lifelines. They grant legitimacy, authority, and protection that cannot be bought or manufactured. For Harry, retaining them means maintaining relevance, ensuring his children's place in history, and safeguarding his voice against the machinery of the monarchy. Without them, he risks becoming a figure of curiosity, a celebrity stripped of power and protection, exposed to both public scrutiny and institutional indifference. Timing is critical. Monarchies operate with patience and precision. They observe, they weigh, and they act decisively when authority is consolidated. Charles may have hesitated in the past, but William's rise represents the next phase, a monarch trained to act swiftly and strategically. For William, tolerance for deviation from a brother who has publicly challenged tradition is minimal, and Harry's return coincides with a transitional period when the institution's patience is at its thinnest. Harry is not merely negotiating for himself. He is negotiating for his family, for his children's future, and for the legacy of a mother whose life and death still influence palace dynamics. Every decision, every appeal, every conversation is amplified by context, history, and the unyielding machinery of monarchy. He is racing against a clock he cannot control, trying to assert influence in a system designed to operate independently of personal urgency. William's role intensifies the stakes. Unlike Charles, who often balanced duty with sentiment, William is methodical, strategic, and disciplined. His coronation is not ceremonial. It is a consolidation of authority. Decisions made in this period carry a permanence that is rare and irreversible. Harry knows this, and his urgency is fueled by the understanding that the opportunity to negotiate or influence outcomes may vanish once William ascends. And yet, this is not a story of cold calculation alone. Harry is emotional, aware of the personal costs involved. Pride, fear, desperation, and love intermingle as he navigates these high-stakes negotiations. Family relationships, already strained by years of distance and public conflict, add complexity. Each gesture is loaded with significance. Each conversation is fraught with potential consequence. Adding another layer is Meghan Markle. Her presence is not incidental. It shapes perception, influences strategy, and intensifies scrutiny. She is both a shield and a lightning rod. Every move Harry makes is assessed not only for its personal or institutional impact, but also for the implications of their partnership. The monarchy is evaluating not just Harry, but the union that challenges tradition, draws attention, and reshapes public perception. Reports suggest Harry's objective is clear: preserve titles, maintain influence, and protect legacy. But the challenge is profound. Independence and defiance, once statements of freedom, now risk undermining his position. Every action is evaluated against centuries of protocol, institutional expectation, and the looming authority of a future king. Timing is everything, and every misstep could redefine his place within the monarchy forever. History underscores the gravity. Monarchies rarely act with spectacle. They remove influence quietly, adjust privilege subtly, and reshape legacy without fanfare. The transitional period of a coronation is the ideal moment to consolidate power. Harry's return, therefore, is fraught with risk. Delay, miscalculation, or an ill-timed appeal could render him not merely powerless, but irrelevant. The human dimension is equally profound. Brothers, fathers, and children are bound by duty and blood. Harry's choices affect not just himself, but his children, his spouse, and the historical narrative he leaves behind. Independence, once a strength, is now a vulnerability. Every conversation, every gesture, every appeal must be calculated with extraordinary care. This is why Harry's return is urgent, high stakes, and tense. It is not a ceremonial homecoming. It is a confrontation with power, consequence, and timing. The corridors of the palace that once symbolized tradition and legacy now represent negotiation, risk, and the unrelenting scrutiny of authority. The question is stark. Can Harry reclaim agency in a monarchy he once rejected? Or is this return a final, desperate attempt to mitigate the consequences of past choices before William's authority renders negotiation impossible? As the coronation looms and the palace prepares for the consolidation of power, Harry faces a moment where every word, every step, every interaction carries historical weight. His future, his legacy, and his family's place in the royal narrative all hang in the balance. And as he takes his first steps deeper into this web of tradition, strategy, and expectation, the first warning signs of the challenges ahead are already emerging. Challenges that will test not only his titles, but his identity, his resilience, and his ability to navigate a system that rarely forgives deviation. But what came next would change everything, and no one, not even Harry, saw it coming. When most people hear the word prince, they imagine a fairy tale figure. A man in polished shoes, tailored suits, and ceremonial robes, moving gracefully through a world of pomp, privilege, and protocol. But in reality, a title like Prince of Sussex carries far more than aesthetic or symbolic value. It is a mechanism of power, influence, and protection, and for Prince Harry, it is suddenly a lifeline. Titles in the British monarchy are not just honorifics. They are instruments of authority, legitimacy, and, crucially, leverage. They allow a royal to speak, act, and navigate the world with a level of protection few can imagine. A prince without a title is not merely a private citizen. He is vulnerable to the machinery of the institution he once belonged to, and to a media ecosystem that thrives on speculation, scandal, and narrative. Consider what a title provides: recognition from the monarchy itself, influence in ceremonial and charitable endeavors, legal and institutional backing, access to spaces, people, and decisions that shape the public perception of the family and the nation. These privileges are subtle, often invisible to the public, but they are woven into every aspect of royal life. Lose them, and the ability to shape one's own story diminishes significantly. For Harry, the stakes are not abstract. His titles define his children's status, his access to institutional resources, and his legitimacy in public life. Without them, He becomes a figure of curiosity, a celebrity stripped of the authority that separates his voice from ordinary opinion. In practical terms, this is not just a blow to ego or identity. It is a threat to his ability to protect what matters most: his family, his legacy, and the autonomy he has fought to preserve. The urgency is amplified by timing. Prince William's coronation will consolidate power in a way that Charles, despite decades on the throne, could not fully enact. Authority shifts, tolerance narrows, and decisions about who remains protected and who becomes peripheral are finalized. In that context, Harry's titles are more than symbols. They are shields. Losing them could redefine not only his role within the monarchy, but also his ability to influence outcomes in his personal and public life. Historical precedent underscores the danger. Edward VIII lost everything when he abdicated. Princess Margaret's privileges were constrained by choices that conflicted with institutional expectation. The monarchy has mechanisms, often quiet, subtle, and legally sanctioned, to redefine roles, strip influence, and curtail power without public spectacle. Harry is acutely aware that during transitional periods, these mechanisms operate with maximum effectiveness. But why does this matter now? Because titles are also about perception. They signal status to the world, not just within the palace. They confer respect, recognition, and a voice that commands attention. They allow a royal to challenge or critique without being dismissed entirely. Without a title, every criticism, every revelation, every statement is filtered through a lens of personal grievance rather than institutional relevance. In short, the crown protects influence, and Harry's influence is tied directly to his titles. This is compounded by his previous decisions. By stepping away from full-time royal duties, Harry created a paradox. He rejected the institution but relied upon the privileges it conferred. Titles are both the connection and the tether, linking him to a heritage he once claimed he could live without, but which now defines the stakes of his survival. Losing them would render every previous achievement, every public statement, every charitable effort secondary to the narrative constructed by the monarchy. William's coronation intensifies this pressure. A new king has the authority to redefine the hierarchy, clarify roles, and assert control over titles and influence. The decision to maintain, adjust, or strip a title is not arbitrary. It is strategic, designed to preserve stability, project power, and manage perception. Harry's position, once secure by birth, is now contingent on timing, negotiation, and perceived loyalty. Titles also serve as protection in legal and financial matters. The monarchy's resources, from funding of staff to access to security, are tied to institutional recognition. Without a title, Harry could lose not only symbolic power but practical safeguards. In a world of global media scrutiny, litigation, and public controversy, these protections are more than convenience. They are survival tools. And there is the public dimension. Titles carry weight in the court of public opinion. The media treats a prince differently than a celebrity or former royal. Influence over narrative, control over messaging, and the ability to command attention without being dismissed is tied to recognition. A prince stripped of title becomes vulnerable to misrepresentation, speculation, and manipulation. Forces Harry has already battled in the past, but which would now be far more difficult to counter. Furthermore, titles influence family dynamics. Within the monarchy, they are markers of status, respect, and entitlement. They define the hierarchy, delineate responsibilities, and structure relationships. Losing a title is not just a public humiliation. It is a private recalibration of power and respect. For Harry, this affects his standing with his father, his brother, and the broader royal family, relationships already strained and now complicated by the impending coronation. It is no wonder, then, that reports describe Harry's return as urgent, anxious, and strategic. He is not simply attending family events or making appearances. He is negotiating survival, leveraging relationships, and attempting to assert influence within a system designed to limit deviation. Every meeting is carefully orchestrated. Every conversation is measured for risk. Every gesture carries potential consequences for his personal and institutional standing. Meghan Markle's involvement adds an additional layer of complexity. Her presence amplifies both scrutiny and protection. As a partner, She is an advocate, a strategist, and, to some within the palace, a complicating factor. Their union reshapes perception, influences negotiation, and alters the dynamics of power. Every decision Harry makes is viewed through the lens of their partnership, intensifying both pressure and opportunity. Harry's struggle highlights a broader truth about monarchy. Titles are never just ceremonial. They are mechanisms of survival, influence, and legacy. Losing them is not merely symbolic. It carries tangible consequences for identity, family, and agency. And in the context of William's coronation, those consequences are imminent. The stakes could not be higher. Every decision Harry makes now, every negotiation, every appeal, every strategic choice, has the potential to define his role for decades. Will he maintain his titles, his influence, and his position? Or will he emerge from this transitional period stripped of both privilege and authority, forced to navigate a world where his voice carries less weight, his legacy is uncertain, and his identity as a prince is diminished? The answer, like the coronation itself, is approaching rapidly. And as Harry moves deeper into the palace, confronting tradition, authority, and family dynamics, the true value of his titles, and what losing them might mean, becomes more urgent, more personal, and more dangerous than ever before. But what Harry didn't yet realize was that the stakes extended far beyond his own titles, and that the decisions being made in private corridors would ripple through generations in ways he could not anticipate.